Hello and welcome back to the Arcane Forge, but more importantly, welcome back to Dragon December, this whole month of dragon-themed content here on the channel. My name's Josh, and today I'll be talking about the lore and mythology of a specific type of dragon in the lead up to the December holidays, whatever those are for you. For me, they're Christmas, but I hope whatever you're celebrating is absolutely fantastic this year. And because there are way too many dragons to choose from, both in terms of mythology, in the real world, and in Dungeons & Dragons, I asked you guys over on Patreon what you'd like to see, and you voted that today you'd really like to hear about void dragons, kind of cosmic and spacey dragons, which were an absolute hoot to draw. So, wrap up warm for the void, the freezing void of space. Let's get talking about these dragons. So what are void dragons? Well, half of their nature is in their name. They are dragons. And I know what you're thinking. You didn't come here to be talked down to, and I apologise for that. But void dragons are so strange and so rare that it's worth pointing out that they do have some similarities to dragons that we might be more familiar with, and work backwards from there, I guess. They, like most true dragons, are incredibly intelligent, ancient in a sense that defies our understanding of time, enormously magically powerful creatures with 6 limbs, 2 of which being great and awe-inspiring wings. They are treasure hoarders like most dragons, but rather than any tangible treasures with a monetary value, the almost timeless nature of these dragons cause them to seek out and obsessively collect knowledge, so much so that it can even drive these creatures mad, an effect that they can pass on to you. Where they start to diverge from more familiar dragons, in at least appearance however, is in their scales. Void dragons seemingly have no scales, or at least if they do, they're so seamless as to be indistinguishable from a uniform matte skin. Instead, their bodies are a network of constellations, black holes, stellar nurseries, cosmic dust clouds, and legions upon legions of stars, set on a backdrop of pure emptiness, with 2 blazing novae for eyes. They look as though someone has cut out a hole in the night sky in the shape of a dragon and let it roam throughout the cosmos, as beautiful and destructive as the black holes that hold many galaxies like our own in their orbit. If you've not heard of void dragons before, don't worry. They came to us in 5th edition through the Tome of Beasts, an absolutely excellent monster manual adjacent catalogue of horrifyingly brilliant, thought-provoking, and terribly deadly monsters created by the Kobold Press Company. I'm trying not to gush, but I truly love Kobold Press books, and consider them so polished as to be almost canon. So while I'm not sponsored by Kobold Press, if you guys wanted to sponsor me, I'd definitely not say no. But the idea of void dragons, or something like them, has been a part of D&D in its past, and as well as being in its present in Pathfinder, the spiritual successor to D&D. 2nd edition brought with it Spelljammer in 1989, one of my all-time favourite, and at least in my opinion, one of the most creative and unusual fantasy settings I've heard of, with a setting that hopes to explore the vast, empty expanse of space and indulge fantasy fanatics with a love of familiar themes like magic. Naturally, dragons who occupy the realms of, quote, the wild space as it's known in the setting, are bound to arise. For Spelljammer, these came in the form of star dragons, celestial dragons, radiant dragons, however you want to name them. Spelljammer at least considers these all to be one kind of dragon, who, unlike our Kobold Press variant, resembles a massive silvery metallic serpent with 2 translucent wings and no arms or legs to speak of. The Tome of Beasts does give us a creature known as a star drake as well, who seems more closely to match this description, being largely identical aside from its wyvern-like body structure and the addition of 2 hind legs. But I feel like the void dragon is also inspired by this same idea, or at least I would be remiss if I didn't mention some kind of connection to these star-spanning dragons of old. Void dragons, at least as far as Kobold Press is concerned, drift through the vast emptiness of the cosmic ocean, seeking knowledge of all kinds to sate their endless appetites for information. The sheer volume of planet that they have visited, the magnificent and terrible things they have seen in their nearly endless lives, makes encounters with adventurers seem mundane by comparison. They are neither particularly aggressive nor benevolent, but come across as indifferent and perhaps aloof. For no creature, save for the gods themselves, are the trifling emptiness of humanoids, their disputes over what corner of a speck of dust that they call a planet, supported by a whisper of gravity that they choose to war over, less significant. They've seen countless worlds drifting around countless stars, orbiting an inconceivably vast number of galaxies, wandering aimlessly through an unsympathetic cosmos. The things that interest you and I will crumble to dust before they have time to care about them. And yet, the knowledge, the information that you have attained, if it is unique, if it is something that they have not added to their collection, conversely drives them to obsession, so they are complicated creatures indeed. Their wandering and knowledge hoarding does get them into all kinds of trouble, however. They can't resist collecting information of any kind. And in a universe as unsympathetic, at best, as our own, or often malevolent in nature in the case of D&D, they can find themselves learning things that they might wish that they hadn't. We need look no further than the patrons of Great Old One warlocks to discover that some knowledge is better left unseen and unread, a stone best left where it was in blissful ignorance, and yet the nature of these dragons is to overturn that stone with furious abandon and addictive yearning. As a result, the older these dragons are, the more likely they are to have discovered some truly unsettling and reality-breaking secrets that may drive them to madness. Like our own universe, it could be the fact that all of our efforts and endeavours, even to a creature as ancient and powerful as a void dragon, is ultimately futile. Our universe is constantly expanding. The force of entropy is a cosmic law. All things will eventually break down to their base materials. The vast distances between all things will eventually expand so much that not even the bonds that hold atoms together will be able to sustain matter in any meaningful sense. Eventually, the last star will burn its final atom. The last black hole will radiate away its final fragment of energy. Molecules will be too stretched to bond, and the universe will die not with any explosive cosmic event, but in a whimper of nothingness. No life could conceivably survive in this void. No empire, no achievement will stand to be remembered. Nothing will survive time, and therefore all endeavours, save for enjoying what time you have to live, have any merit whatsoever. None will be remembered. Even through their works, deeds or stories, all things are futile ultimately. Unlike our own universe though, a void dragon may learn of sickening eldritch things. Perhaps the universe exists because some ancient, sleeping elder god dreams it into existence. Once it wakes, all of reality will vanish in an instant, forgotten like its dream. Maybe something older than time is devouring all things, and it's impossible to resist its impending apocalyptic consumption. Whatever secrets and truths they have amassed, they are incredibly likely to be driven mad. A madness which makes them confused, sometimes violent, even despite their general neutrality. They cannot help but radiate this madness to those nearby, and without necessarily learning the eldritch secrets that drive the dragon to confusion, you may simply be driven mad permanently, infuriatingly for no discernible reason, just by standing in its proximity, if you indeed survive an encounter with one of these temperamental demigods. Now, while I have your attention, I just wanted to take this opportunity to say a massive thank you to my patrons over on Patreon, without whom this content would not exist. Making these videos is a huge undertaking. It takes up a massive amount of my time, and I consider it work. So my patrons over on Patreon essentially pay me for the time that it takes to make this content, to make this entertainment. For a lot of them, that's £1 a month, which is already paying me more than YouTube advertising will do for this video's entire lifetime. But those of them who pay me the price of a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, once a month, and above deserve special mention. And this month they are Raptor Dio, Duck Quack, Nicholas G. Silver, Jonathan Foster, George Punton, Napin Camo, Yorick Beast, The Smiling Sadist, Amanda and Jake Westfall, Ethan Dibby, Nathan Stratton, Bartle Gruff the Great, Braxton Hudson, Cav Manic, Matt Lichtenwallner, Healthy Wolf, Peter Balf, Max Schluter, Darth Gaetana, Oliver Thorvald Mellock, Colby Monroe, Styrax, Ryan H., Steve Harrison, Max Copeland, Tamerling, Dan Waterman, Sam Hickson, Dominique Jolly, AJ, Christian Palmer-Smith, and of course Aldrin as well. So thank you to everyone on Patreon, but in particular, a massive thank you to all of these people who helped make this content. So if you enjoy this content, and if we were to meet in person and you'd think to offer me a cup of coffee, then I'd urge you to go and check out Patreon. I'll leave a link down below in my description box where you can go to do that, and I really appreciate that. If that's something that you can't afford, then that's what these very, very generous souls are doing. They're paying for the people to watch this content who can't afford that. So thank you all so much for your help and for paying for the viewers who can't pay for themselves. That's really kind of you. But I've diverted your attention for way too long now. So where was I? Oh yeah. Their Aura of Madness is an effect that they can use as a main action, which says that each creature of the dragon's choice that is within 120 feet of the dragon and aware of it must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or become frightened for 1 minute. A creature repeats the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on itself on a success. If a creature fails the saving throw by 5 or more, it is driven insane. An insane creature is frightened permanently and believes as if affected by confusion while it is frightened in this way. If a creature's saving throw is successful, or the aura ends for it, the creature is immune to the dragon's Aura of Madness for the next 24 hours. Peculiarly for something that hoards knowledge, these creatures don't have the most absurd stats when it comes to wisdom and intelligence. Their intelligence is 18, which is great, not the best, but great, and their wisdom is 15, which is a +2, which I would have assumed would have been quite a lot higher, bearing in mind I'm talking about an ancient void dragon here. The Tome of Beasts has void dragons of all shapes and sizes, from the wormling all the way up, and by the time it reaches an ancient void dragon, I would have assumed it would have lived long enough to have more wisdom. But then, I suppose, if you are going to uncover all knowledge and be driven mad by it, perhaps your grasp on reality, your grasp on conventional wisdom is skewed. Because of the vast distances in the empty expanse of space, the Void Dragon has been afforded a few rules to allow it to traverse easily. For a start, it's immune to cold damage, so being left in the vacuum of space won't kill it through frost at least. But we're also told that it doesn't require air, food, drink, or sleep. It can choose to magically teleport as a main action to any open space within 100 feet of it. And further to that, we're told that when flying between stars, the Void Dragon magically glides on solar winds, making the immense journey through the void in an impossibly short time. Void Dragons have 2 breath weapons, which it can choose from, but both have the same recharge, relying on the reroll of a 5 or a 6 on the roll of a d6 at the start of the DM's turn. It has the immensely fun Gravitic Breath, which causes a 90-foot cube of gravitational force to restrain creatures who don't dodge out of the way of it, and draws all creatures to the ground, dealing 1d10 falling damage per 10 feet fallen. They also have a more conventional breath weapon in the form of Stellar Flare Breath, which in a 90-foot cone deals 13d6 radiant damage and 13d6 fire damage. The Tome of Beast monsters do not mess around. They have reactions, including Void Twist, which acts a bit like the shield spell. It says that when the dragon is hit by a ranged attack, it can create a small rift in space to increase its armor class by 7 against the attack. If the attack misses because of this increase, the dragon can choose a creature within 30 feet to become the new target for the attack, using the original attack roll to determine if the attack hits the new target, which is absolutely horrendous. Its legendary actions, including the traditional Wisdom Perception check, or tail attack, includes Void Slip, which is identical to a wing attack, knocking people prone and allowing the dragon to move to a nearby space, but in this case teleporting rather than flying, and something called Void Cache, which allows the dragon to magically reach into its treasure hoard and retrieve 1 item. If the dragon is hoarding an item, it can use this ability to deposit an item into that hoard. This is already horrendously powerful. Where this creature becomes an unsettlingly overpowered monster, though, is in a rule known as Collapsing Star, which, like a Balor, or a Pit Fiend, I forget which, when they die, bursts into a fiery explosion. Instead, ancient void dragons collapse into a black hole upon death. This rule says that when the void dragon is killed, it explodes in a swath of celestial destruction. Each creature and object within 1 mile of the dragon takes 10d10 bludgeoning damage and 10d10 cold damage Thanks to a rule called Chill of the Void, cold damage dealt by the Void Dragon ignores resistance to cold damage, but not cold immunity. That's not where the damage ends though. They also get a further 10d10 psychic damage, and each damage type can be reduced by half with a successful saving throw. Dexterity versus the bludgeoning damage, Constitution versus the cold, and Wisdom versus the psychic. Additionally, a creature that fails 2 or 3 of the saving throws is affected by a plane shift spell and sent to a random plane. If it's sent to a plane it currently occupies, it appears 5d100 miles away in a random direction. Now I think we can all be glad that these things are chaotic neutral. They're not evil aligned, because I feel like these might be some of the deadliest creatures that I've read. But they make a great demigod, a great boss monster. They make a great big bad evil guy, or big bad neutral guy, I guess, in your campaign, and are worth using, although it's definitely worth letting your players know what happens when these creatures die, or at least preparing them for it if you want a campaign to continue, because I can't imagine much surviving that kind of thing. But they are absolutely magnificent creatures, and I really hope to use one in the right circumstances in future campaigns. Kobold Press aims to sort of fix the problems that it sees with the challenge rating system, in that monsters tend to be a tiny bit easier in most circumstances by making them very, very tough. And in no creature is this exemplified for me more than in Void Dragons. But they're beautiful, deadly, and great monsters to base quests or whole campaigns around. So if you're planning something Spelljammer adjacent, I hope you'll use one. And when you do, I hope you'll refer back to this video. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave it a like, leave a little favourite. And if you like the illustration, make sure to head over to my Patreon, because my patrons at certain levels get access to all of the illustrations I do each month, including this one. But in the meantime, I hope you have a fantastic Dragon December. I hope you're getting wonderfully warm and festive in your non-dragon based holidays and celebrations. And until next time, happy monster hunting.